it was like a gold rush. We had the best incentives in the nation, without proper staffing at the film office and without proper oversight. You know, from what has been come out in the media, and what we know, you know, there were a lot of people here, and they were doing good work, and they were following the rules, but there were a couple bad apples that just really kind of abused the program. And then, so that came to light. The state was experiencing a huge budget crisis, and it was shut down just very quickly. You know, hindsight's always 20/20. You know, it would have been. We were advocating from the beginning to lift the suspension on all the films in the pipeline. I mean, within even before. No, it was right after it was formally suspended. But within 6 hours, we were advocating for it to be lifted. You know, and there are a ton of films still in the pipeline, but by closing everything down, people left. People left the state, they picked up and they moved on. We were really active this past year working with several different people, from the film commissioners, Becky Grudy with the Des Moines Film Commission, Doug Miller, Quad Cities Film Commission, Susan Gorell, Film Southeast Iowa, along with the Teamsters and individuals, Kim and John Busby, Gene Hamilton, Jay Villock, Neil Wells. There was like a really core group of advocates, along with our membership, who were calling and emailing and writing letters to the editor and editorials. I mean, it was pretty amazing. There were, I mean, just hundreds and hundreds of people really being very active. So we had worked together with all of those people to come up with recommendations. And so we're going to continue to formulate and tweak those recommendations, continue to work with hopefully Senator Dotzler to revamp the program and have a bill reintroduced in this next session lifting this suspension. The program is currently suspended until 2013, but we received strong reassurances from several people up at the Capitol, in the legislature, that you know, that they want to move forward, they want to revamp the plan, they want to get going again. So we hired Craig Patterson and Amy Campbell, and they were a fantastic resource for us, and so they were up there on our behalf, working day and night actually on this issue, trying to get the suspension lifted. Well, there is a misconception that these jobs are part-time or temporary, or that they don't make a lot of money. The thing is that this is a project-based career, and so you go from project to project, and they're high-paying. The average, the Iowa Department of Economic Development, they have a high-quality jobs program, and to qualify for this, you have to pay a certain level. So the state average is $18.60 per hour. The typical, in this industry, when you're employed on a project, the typical working day is 12 hours. Day rate ranges, they range from $150 to $1,000 depending on your expertise. So that's like from a basic production assistant at the bottom to, you know, somebody doing pyrotechnics up at the top. So if you use a median day rate of $300 a day, that's $25 per hour, much higher than the state average. If that person at $300 a day works 27 5-day weeks, they bring home $40,500 per year. If they work 13 weeks, or 13 of those weeks are 6-day weeks, then they bring home an additional $3,900. So, you know, Iowans were starting to move up the totem pole of the production industry. We had basically at least 6 months worth of work, if not more, and people were starting to really put those projects together. Things that were needed to facilitate year-round employment included sound stages. Those were beginning to happen. People were going to be making the investments into the state's infrastructure, so people were going to be able to work 12 months a year. So people were moving up. The percentage of Iowa cast and crew, they were getting trained up, so there was greater percentage of Iowa cast and crew. You know, people were making a really good living on this industry. And so these were full-time, high-paying jobs, but they were project-based. And so I always like to clear up that misconception whenever I have a chance. That's another thing. There was tremendous growth within 2 years. The program was enacted in 2000. Just out of the woodwork, people were wanting to come home. There were people who had never been to the state before that were being brought to the state for these productions. They loved it here. They loved the people. They loved our lifestyle. They loved the quality of life. They wanted to stay. They wanted to put down roots. I've been a lifelong Iowan. I did leave for a few years, but I came back. But we have an aging population. They always talk about how we need to increase and keep young people here, stop the brain drain. And this program was doing that. That was just, in my first week on the job, I was just flabbergasted by all these young people who were just so excited to come here because they loved Iowa, but they wanted to pursue their dreams. They wanted to work in the industry of their choice, and in order to do that, they had to leave our state, but they didn't want to. But finally, we were bringing that industry here, and so they were going to be able to come home. And that, I think, is one of the saddest things about what's happened. So we need to bring it back. We need to get the incentives, but we need to grow the industry even without them, to get people to come here, to create and increase the cultural economy of our state. Our state needs to diversify, and this is an industry that can do that. Also, when the incentives were stopped, we had just a large loss of economic impact. The state, just a snapshot, last summer, the Council Bluffs CVB, Convention and Visitors Bureau, reported a $500,000 impact on the area. In Des Moines, $34.5 million was seen in positive economic impact in just the 2 years of the program. And in the Quad Cities, they experienced $3 million in positive economic impact. And that was just over 2 years. But there was so much in the works. And when the suspension was put into place, the Des Moines area, lost $50 million in estimated economic impact. And that came from hotel room nights. So there were 37,000 motel room nights booked. Okay, that got canceled. And all of those people, when they come into an area like that, they are buying food, they're buying gas, they're eating at the restaurants, they're shopping at the local stores. So it's hard to measure that. A lot of people always talk about the ROI. It is hard to measure that, but that was real, and it was happening, and it was a huge bright spot in the middle of a huge economic downturn. The economy is starting to rebound, and we've been actually lucky in Iowa. It has not been as severe as it's been around the nation, but it was still tight here. It was freaking depressing, in my opinion. I can't even imagine living in New York or anything like that. But, this was keeping, I think, some businesses open and people employed, and really helped from rural communities to large communities. I was talking about Des Moines, but in Lenox, and around that area, that the Crazies were shot in 2009 last year. And there were reports. There were donations made to the city government, rental fees and coordinating things like that. They had housing in they took up all the possible housing within Lenox. They had to go to Creston, and it was huge. It was just, a large area of homes. They were renting out people's homes. They didn't even have hotels totally for everyone. People's tip jars were crammed full of money. All of that money that was brought into the Lenox area was a huge economic infusion into that community. They want more people to come back. Also, Quad Cities, over in the Quad Cities, there were plans for a digital animation facility. They were planning to create 75 jobs that paid between $40,000 and $75,000 per year to work on this animated feature called Troll. And they probably would have then stayed after. There was going to be at least a 2-year commitment, but they were looking to really lay down roots and to stay here for the long haul. I mean, that's a lot of people employed at really high wages. And that, like I said, is just a snapshot. I mean, I have met so many people since I've started this job. I can't even tell you. I mean, I've probably easily met definitely over 1,000 people. And there were so many that I have met who are now gone. You know, they held on as long as they could, but they had to leave because there were no longer jobs here, and the industry just really kind of froze up. But the people who are here are working hard to cultivate the industry, and hopefully those people will be back. Gigapix, they had planned 5 films to be shot here. They were renting out Southridge Mall, which that mall unfortunately has really been on the downturn or downward slide for years, and so there was tons of retail space that was sitting empty. So they were repurposing it, and they were building a soundstage with a blue screen, and they were planning to be here for the long haul and to be employing Iowans for projects, as well as they were going to probably be hiring people full-time as well too. But you know, and they held on. I mean, they were talking with the state. They were asking for, you know, they were saying like, we want to be your poster child. We want to, you know, let's work together. Let's get this going. You know, we will tell you, we will give you detailed reports on our spending, you know, on a daily basis. They were really committed to being here, but you know, I haven't heard any updates. You know, they were reworking the story. We're planning to still come back and shoot, incentives or not, because they were in the pipeline, and so they can now enter into contracts. The full suspension did only last from September until, so the end of September until the end of November. It was still very gray, but they did lift the suspension on projects that were in the pipeline. So now the Iowa Film Office is working through, it's been a long process, but they have finally started issuing contracts, and Hazel Productions over on the east side of the state is going to be moving forward with some productions. You know, but we lost like Cedar Rapids. That was a $20 million film. They went and shot in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So a lot of these films have moved on. But Gigapix, they were somebody that they wanted to stay here. So I haven't heard anything lately. I hope that the state is extending contracts. I hope that they sign them and come back.